I had to make.
Awesome. Thank you. Good morning. Hi, everyone. I'm Lexi Grittelfeld. I'm with California Outdoor Recreation Partnership. For those who do not know, we are a 501c6 nonprofit organization that represents the outdoor industry in California on policy advocacy. We are hosting this event in partnership with our friends at Outdoor Alliance California and the Outdoor Industry Association. And we're stoked to welcome our first Deputy Secretary for Access in California, Katherine Toy. Deputy Secretary Toy joined the California Natural Resources Agency in January 2022 as the first Deputy Secretary for Access, leading the agency's efforts to expand equitable access to the public lands, museums, and historic spaces operated and managed by the agency for all Californians. Katherine also serves as the agency's key point of contact with the Department of Parks and Recreation to support the department as it responds to emerging challenges and opportunities. Katherine's deep belief in the ability of everyday people to make history every day has shaped her career. She has spent the last 30 years working to increase access, belonging, and participation in public and civic spaces and institutions, from teaching history to championing volunteer engagement, and most recently as Deputy CEO of the Golden Gate National Park Conservancy. And without further ado, I'll pass it over to Deputy Secretary Toy. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Lexi. And thank you for your partnership here in speaking to your members today. It's thrilling to be at this point where we can have some fun interaction today. So I'm looking for you all not to be shy about that. We specifically set up a meeting format so that we could engage more easily with one another. So today, my goal is to talk a little bit about the Outdoors for All initiative and to also get some feedback from all of you as folks in the outdoor recreation industry about what outdoor access means to you and how you see the outdoor industry being engaged in these efforts. So maybe the first thing I would love to do is if everyone would just introduce themselves in the chat, maybe say hi from where you're zooming in from today. Maybe we've got your name in the chat, but say maybe what organization or industry you represent and where you're calling in from, zooming in from. I have to say I am zooming in today from Los Angeles, California. I normally am in San Francisco or Sacramento, but today I'm in Los Angeles. All right. Gosh, I wish I was in Mammoth Lakes. Terrific. It's good to see that we've got people from all different portions of the state and even Colorado. All right, so I'm going to have my colleague and co-conspirator from Kim Guo start to share slides for me so we can be talking. And good morning, everyone. Okay, so Outdoors for All. What is Outdoors for All? So Outdoors for All is the initiative of the Natural Resources Agency to build and bring equitable access to the outdoors to all Californians. And really this builds upon Governor Newsom's California for All initiative to bring a more prosperous and equitable California to everyone who lives here. And specifically, Outdoors for All is housed in the Natural Resources Agency and our 27 departments, commissions, and committees and so forth. So you might all know best our biggest departments like California State Parks and the Department of Fish and Wildlife, our Department of Water Resources, CAL FIRE, and you may also know some of our conservancies, whether that be the Santa Clara Mountains Conservancy, the Tahoe Conservancy, the San Joaquin River Conservancy, and many, many more. And of course, other commissions like the Coastal Commission also play a big role in how we experience the outdoors in California. So I came on board with the Natural Resources Agency as the state's first Deputy Secretary for Access back in January of this year, and time has really flown by. And just a little bit about me, this is actually my first time working in government, although I've worked alongside state and federal government for many years in the state and National Park Service as a nonprofit partner. And in fact, I think I saw Nancy Kaplan on the call, who I know from Golden Gate. And it has really been both, I think, a great experience coming from the nonprofit sector, being familiar with what nonprofit agencies and community-based organizations need. And then coming into state government, for me, the reason why I made the change is I do believe that the biggest opportunity to create lasting change for the most people occurs in government, or has that possibility. And perhaps that's the lens that I also bring to it, because I began my career as a history teacher. And I used to say, everyday people make history every day to my students. And I meant that they were not to be bystanders in the story of their lives, but in fact, to be out there and take action. Next slide. And, so this question about why equitable access, I do believe, hearkening back to my experience as a history teacher, is that our public lands are civic spaces. And by that, I mean, I think, as our society over the years, this has ebbed and flowed about who gets to be considered an American, who gets to belong, where, becomes this question. But public lands are places that we all belong. And in increasing areas of our society where you could be in public or private schools, you could ride a lift instead of taking public transit, you could, there's just increasing, I think, stratification about where different people find themselves. But in a public park or on a trail, or you can find yourself standing next to, as I was saying to the first partner on Monday, next to the first family of California, or next to your, grocery store checkout person, or your librarian, or your teacher. And we can all be marveling in the same experiences of the outdoors. So California, of course, and perhaps it's my bias, I was born and raised in California, but we have undeniably, I think, the most beautiful state in the nation, and one with the most incredible natural resources, from the mountains to the coast and everything in between. But that access to the outdoors in California is not equitable. And this is really becoming a public health imperative as much as anything else. There are mounting research that show that those who spend time in the outdoors have lower rates of obesity, heart disease, and many other ailments. And while we could get Big Pharma to keep inventing new drugs to help those, and I'm sure that will continue to go, at some point, getting outside becomes the best prescription possible, right? And we have the studies that show that people who spend only 30 minutes outdoors a week, which seems such a low bar, but even 30 minutes outside a week will enable you to lower your risks of heart disease, lower your, the percentage of folks with obesity. And more than 30 minutes outside is also shown to increase social cohesion in society. So why wouldn't we create more access to the outdoors as a public health imperative? But unfortunately, that access, again, has not been equitable. So in California, we find that 1 in 4 Californians lives more than a half mile from a park. And that's half mile as the crow flies. So that means that they don't have easy access or walkable daily access to a park near them. When you put in access points, that probably becomes even less, right? So, but even when there's nature nearby, we found that the quality of those natural spaces also is not So in California, 6 out of 10 of us live in what we would consider a park poor neighborhood, or a neighborhood with fewer than 3 acres of open space per 1,000 people. And, you know, in our state with so much bounty, incredible resources, we can do better and we can change those dynamics. But it's going to take some thinking about from all of us to do it. And I'm super excited to be talking with all of you as the outdoor industry, think about how do we best partner? How do we partner with industry? How do we partner with philanthropy? How do we partner with state, tribal, and local governments to make this possible? So that, you know, and I'm in the process of trying to create this strategy. So I don't know what the metrics will be yet, but you know, I'm thinking, is it going to be possible for us to knock down that metric of 1 in 4 living without, you know, outside of an easy walk to a park, to something like 1 in 3 in the next 5 years, or 1 in 2, you know, I mean, how can we erase that barrier altogether? So these are some of the things that I'm charged to think about over, you know, and my hope is to come out with a draft strategy in early 2023. And that's why it's a terrific time to be talking to you all now about what are the ways in which the outdoor industry can be a partner in equitable access here in California. So the input that we've gotten at the state level on equitable access and its issues really started back a year ago, before I even came on board. And in the summer of 2021, some of you may have also participated in my colleague Jen Norris's process on the California 30 by 30 initiative to protect 30% of California's land and waters by 2030. And in that effort, Dr. Norris asked in her regional sessions a question about access. And what did access mean to folks in those regions? She also had a statewide listening session on equitable access. So we've been combing through all of that feedback to really understand what people's both challenges and opportunities are around equitable access. For the last couple months, I've also been talking to all of our departments, big departments, and some of our conservancies and other commissions and committees and such, to say what are their barriers and opportunities in terms of bringing about more equitable access in their programs, in their funding, in the way they do their work. Because some of the changes in the strategy, they're going to be, you know, both where do we need to make investments to help with equitable access, financial investments to infrastructure, where do we need to, what kind of maybe programming do we need to do? What kind of policies might we need to change about how we do our business, maybe about how we give out our grants, how we permit different things, what fees we charge. Some of those will be administrative changes, some may be legislative changes, and some of them maybe really just be about changing the way we do our work, right? As sort of more of a cultural change. So all those things are possible. But here you see up on screen now, really about what are the kinds of barriers that we have gathered from the communities. And these are some of the top things that we hear, and it's probably not a surprise to you as the folks who have been in the outdoors space for quite a while, right? So lack of nearby open spaces, it's what I was just talking about in terms of those numbers, 1 in 4 who lack easy access to a public park or open space. Transportation to those spaces near and far was on there. So I'm in Los Angeles, as I said, and yesterday had the opportunity to visit different park sites with the head of LA County Parks. And in this great metropolis, something could be maybe not that many miles away, 12 miles away, but it could take you an hour to get there, right, in Los Angeles. So And there may not be easy routes to go. And then there are magnificent wild spaces that are quite far. So Yosemite and the wonders of that, if you're, a child living in Los Angeles or San Diego or San Francisco or in the far north, that's not so easy to get to. So what are the transit barriers? And then there's this lack of awareness, which has come up to me more surprising of an emphasis than I thought it would be. So people simply, and we hear this both from stakeholders as well as from our departments, that people simply don't even know what's around, what's available to them, what you can do there, let alone how to get there. That there's simply a knowledge barrier to understanding what's available. Finances have also been tagged as a key barrier. So that's, for example, up at Lake Tahoe, you could be a recreation industry worker, actually supporting or hospitality worker in Lake Tahoe and be surrounded by public open space, but it not be accessible to you if many of the sports may require very expensive gear, or say, ski gear or lift tickets that are financially out of reach, or surfing with the cost of a surfboard or a mountain bike. So these are costs that are coming up as prohibitive, as well as just, even first time camping. You don't know if you want to do it or not, but it would take a lot to be able to know what kind of gear to get or investment to buy it. And then lastly, but certainly I think among the most important and the biggest barriers, is not feeling welcome or comfortable in open spaces. So a lot of folks in the communities have shared that, one, I don't see people who look like me in this space, not among fellow folks on the trails or on the ski slopes or so forth, and not among the staff. So not among who's welcoming or, collecting fees at the gate, or who's interpreting the history, who is, the park ranger enforcing the laws. And so that feels not welcoming. Do I belong here when I don't see anyone who looks like me? Or, people are participating or doing activities that I don't know how to do. So those are some of the biggest barriers that we've seen that have risen to the top. And I would say that, those are ones that probably don't come as a big surprise to you all. So what are we doing right now? Even before the strategy is out, the state has been making some investments to address some of these areas already. So we want to show you on the next slide what some of those recent investments have been. So for example, this barrier to access, like physically, what is the physical infrastructure to create more parks? So I'm pleased to say that the budget that was just passed, the final budget for future years, and some of this money is coming across not just in 1 year, but across several of the next years, and that's almost $225 million for the statewide parks program. That is a granting program out of California State Parks that is open to local entities. And one of the things I love about this grant program is that one of the requirements is that you must have community-based design in that. It's part of the process. And so these are grants that really are highlighted to serve places that have few park resources already. And the funds can be used to create new parks, say in a city or town, or to renovate existing park properties. The other big news, and I hope you heard that a couple months ago, is that Dos Rios Ranch Preserve is slated to become the next new California state park. And so there was $5 million of reappropriation in this year's budget to do some, pay some of the transfer fees, but also to do what the exciting part is that some of that will pay to get some early work done to get it open. So that we do think we'll be able to get folks onto that property sooner rather than later and not have to wait for like a full general plan before it becomes open in some capacity for folks to just get in there. The fact that that park is where it is at the confluence of the Tuolumne and the, oh my gosh, why am I blanking in the rivers there in the valley, is that the Central Valley has long been identified as one of the more park poor regions of the state. There's lots of, when you, like me or somebody, who drives between two urban areas of the state frequently, I see that that looks like a lot of open land, but that's mostly agricultural land. It's not land that is open for access and recreation. So making Dos Rios the next state park was a big win for park access in the valley. And on our next slide, the other pocket, right, is how do we get more people to the outdoors, to become familiar with the outdoors, to know what opportunities there are, to have it become more familiar. This last budget has also included $75 million for outdoor equity grants. These are relatively new grants that state parks has given. They gave around this past, just a couple months ago, announced around. And these are grants that allow for programming. And so that's what's really key to these grants. It's similar to the Natural Resources Agency also gives out youth community access grants that are very similar, although those are for youth programs only. We fund those, though, out of essentially what we would call the marijuana tax money. So we also put in this last year's budget $15 million for outdoor education. And one of the things I saw in the outdoor industry report that Lexi shared with me was that there's a concern that not enough young people are getting outside, and sort of not only for their own health, but also in terms of looking forward to who are the future outdoor enthusiasts who are both stewards of the land going forward and really practitioners of outdoor enthusiasts and all that they bring, both for our economy and for their own health and well-being. So outdoor education, how do we get more kids outside? These are programs through state parks that are really looking at how to work more closely with schools. So on Monday, I was also at a convening of the First Partners with several different agencies, interagency collaboration, including the state superintendent, and where we really talked about how can we work more closely together as we develop the next both outdoor enthusiasts and stewards of the environment. And of course, lastly, on the screen here, you see that we added another $13.5 million to the Library Pass program. These park pass programs from state parks that were pilots in this past year have been enormously popular and have showed to be a tremendous boon for bringing lower income families and helping to break down that financial barrier. So again, when we heard finances were a barrier and we're looking for ways to increase access, the Library Pass programs have been enormously successful. So that means that every single library in California, and public library and tribal library, has passes that patrons can check out. You can anybody can get a library card for free, and then you can use that card to check out a library pass to state parks. In addition, we have the fourth grade park pass. So every fourth grader in California can also get a park pass every year. And there's been tremendous pride. I've heard anecdotal stories from children who say that they have so much pride that they're the ones who get to bring their family to the park. which is tremendous. And then we also have a Cal Bear Golden Bear Pass, and that is for all families on public assistance. That's the public assistance. CalWORKS is the public assistance program for families in California, families with children. And those families are all eligible to receive a yearly, what's called a Golden Bear Pass for their own family's park pass for free access to the parks. Now, because we did all of these pass promotions together this year, the Golden Bear Pass, while it's not new, was averaging about 2,100 recipients a year. But this year, since March alone, we've had 26,000 families apply for that program. So these are ways in which we're trying to break down the financial barrier to accessing parks. So thank you. And next slide. The last sort of investment you'll see here is about that sense of belonging. So when I talk about people don't think that they belong in the outdoors because they don't see people or history reflected that matches, their sense of belonging and feeling like they're a part of this story. So some of you may know that my background in parks and my first entry into working with state parks came 25 years ago when I was the first executive director of the Angel Island Immigration Station Foundation. And that, if you've been to Angel Island State Park, is what some people would call the Ellis Island of the West, but is a site that is really important to Asian American history. The fact that it's interpreted as in a California state park today is tremendous. But that part of seeing yourself in history and being a part of the California story is really essential. So some of the investments that we're making are in recognition that the interpretation that currently exists in many of our public parks does not represent California of today and is fairly one-sided. So in recognition of that, $25 million in grant funds was approved for this year. And those are competitive grants that will go to artists. And if you've ever worked in museum interpretation or interpretation, I think you will know that artists are often on the cutting edge of being able to do, I would say, innovative things more quickly. And because they can be temporary exhibits, they can go into parks to help round out the traditional interpretation that's there as the permanent exhibits and interpretation are being re-examined. So there's also $15 million in a partnership between the California African American Museum, which is down in Expo Park in LA, and California State Parks. And this partnership will have those two state institutions working closely together to interpret and tell the stories of Black Californians. And finally, another example of this kind of what I would say a belonging investment is the nearly $10 million that is going in for Parks Tribal Lands Acknowledgement, Interpretation, and Exhibit. So those are the kinds of examples of investments that we're making even ahead of the strategy, the formal strategy being out there. So as I move on from that, I would love to have a little bit of interactive time because I think that's, at least to me, a lot more fun. So those of you who are familiar with Mentimeter, there are two ways that you can interact with this. So this is interactive portion. If you go to the chat, Kim Guo has just put in a link. So the easiest way to do this, if you're new to Mentimeter, is to go to the chat and click on that link. That will bring up your browser, and then you'll kind of have to toggle between this Zoom screen to see our collective answers and the Mentimeter, where through the link, you yourself can type in answers. So the other way, if you're a professional Mentimeter user, you might know that some of you may find it easier to just use your phone and go to menti.com. and then enter in that code at the top of the Zoom screen, 6614-9605. And that way, some people like to just do the answers on their phone and watch the Zoom screen. So right now, if you use either one of those methods, I would love to know, what are you currently doing in the outdoor industry to increase access to the outdoors? And I'll give you a few minutes to just type in. You can type in as many answers as you want, and then they will populate on the Zoom screen that we're sharing. Okay, and we see some of them starting to come in right there. So trying to educate elected officials about barriers to access, spreading the word. When I travel to outdoor spaces to draw attention to places many people have never been, setting up affinity spaces within indoor rock climbing, creating friendships. That's so excellent. North Face has the Explorer Fund for an equity focus. Being the first in one outdoor planning trip with Path Bloom to help people get more outside. So terrific. Thank you so much for putting in your answers there. And I hope you don't mind that I am also going to be using these engagement answers that you've provided to help inform the strategy. Okay, let's move to the next slide. So, again, how do we feel like we belong in the outdoors and experience that joy that outdoor recreation provides? It's what I'm sure drives so many of you to be in the work that you're doing. Next slide. So what role can the outdoor industry play in increasing people's awareness of the Outdoors for All initiative? So here's one where you can play with the, if you're on the screen, the interactive screen, you can put your answers there. I think it's a sliding scale. And then we can see what the group thinks all together. So, one of the ideas as I've been listening to stakeholders say, they don't even know, about what they can do, where they can go, and or that the outdoors belongs to them. And part of me says, we just need a dang good marketing campaign about the outdoors and how wonderful it is, and who gets to belong outside and the joy that that provides. So there we can see, oh, you're all in the we love this. Okay, so you can see there that the scales there, as more people are sort of participating, you can see what are things that folks might consider. So sponsoring, if the state were to make an Outdoors for All big campaign, who might want to sign on as a sponsor? Or how might you take a state campaign and amplify it in your own marketing and messaging? Or would you want to create specific, activity-specific campaigns? Terrific. Let's go to the next slide and see what we have. So here's just maybe have other ideas about how the industry can help raise awareness about the Outdoors for All initiative, about, getting more folks outside, about breaking down barriers to the outdoors. Other thoughts or ideas for how the industry could participate? Gear libraries, love it. Community events. Yep. All right. All excellent ideas. Educating consumers. Additional signage and spaces. Okay. Awesome. I love that you all are events folks. All right. Let's move to the next slide. So the cost, again, of outdoor recreation equipment keeps coming back as a pretty substantial barrier. And that, in fact, comes from an OIA participation report. So it's something that you all are keenly aware of, and I'm sure have been thinking about ways in which the industry can assist with that. So in the next question, you'll see, what role can the outdoor recreation industry play in making outdoor gear more accessible? So one idea might be partnering with state parks on a gear lending library. One of the exciting things that I saw in the Reimagining Big Basin report is that they will have a gear lending library there. I'm not sure how the specifics of how it's going to work, but in thinking toward the future, that is being thought of as perhaps one of the ways in helping to reduce the barriers. So donating to organizations, and I know that some of you already do that, to providing recreation, particularly for organizations for children and families, or perhaps concessions. Are any industry folks interested in providing concessions directly at state parks? Okay, it's great to see those rankings. Let's go to the next question. So any additional ideas about how we could make, in partnership with the outdoor industry, what else can we do to make gear more accessible to folks? Great. Looking at Patagonia's reuse and recycle, buyback programs, used gear, used and consign. Oh, delivered to your door programs. Interesting. Okay. Thank you so much for those suggestions. Let's take a look at the next slide. Okay, so this comes from another OIA report. And so in California, the outdoor recreation industry is, giant, a huge driver of the California economy, and generates, at least from your 2017 report, I know that was a few years ago, but still you can see what the size of the industry is in terms of jobs, almost 700,000 jobs. And I was really stunned, and when I read the industry's report, to know that that is more jobs than the film and wine industries combined, two industries for which California is certainly well known, and that those two industries combined bring about fewer jobs than the outdoor recreation economy. So this has been a big question, I think, for stakeholders, which is one of the most frequent things that came up in the regional conversations last year, were that folks in regions across the country said, we want good green jobs for our kids, and honestly, combined with, I know in state jobs and natural resources, we know there's a silver tsunami coming. We need to be training more, or frankly, that's here. And we need to be training more folks, more young people, opening up pathways into jobs in the outdoor and conservation and natural resource fields. So on the next slide, would love to think about what is the role that the outdoor recreation industry can play in supporting career pathways into the outdoors for youth and adults. So what, and here, just, feel free to just contribute your thoughts here. jot them down, but also I'd love to have some discussion. So if you are interested, this is a place where we set this up as a meeting rather than a webinar so that we could have some discussion back and forth. So please feel free to come off mic your thoughts, because the workforce development and career pathways is a big interest across the state. And it's not just coming from CNRA, it's coming from a lot of different. That the industry has 691,000 jobs. That's a huge potential right there. So I'm seeing, some of the issues that are coming up, ways in which you can be involved is more apprenticeships and internships, mentorships, internships again, college level courses focused on recreation, high school presentations, payment, and we see this for state as well, pay more, sustainable wages. Okay. But is there anyone who would like to come off mic and maybe talk a little bit more about their thoughts, or about maybe even partnerships that you've seen that really work for career pathways?
I can just say on behalf of Corp, last year we launched a new mentorship program with Outdoor Outreach with their leadership program. And it was 12 students, and our offer to them was if they had an interest in a specific role in industry, whether it's like marketing or something like that, we would connect them with an employee at a member company if they wanted. And we did connect a couple. I wish more of them took it up, but it's new, and hopefully in the future we can have a bigger mentorship program with that.
That's super cool. Thanks, Lexi. And do you find that most, I don't know how many of you in your organizations or corporations that you are employed by have actual intern programs? Do some of you have the formal programs? Or is that something that your companies have talked about? In some places it may be easier than others, but I'd be curious to know if folks have them now or have ever talked about developing them. Okay. And really, I think here what we're looking at is, one, the California Conservation Corps does have, is a program that has been around in California for quite a long time and has been one of the pathways into work at our departments and agencies. So they might go onto a trail crew or into CAL FIRE or something like that. So we're looking at how those work. I know, for example, the National Park Service, they actually, I believe that our own California Conservation Corps graduates can get because they have public land corps status with the Corps, can get federal hiring preferences. But the thing that kind of kills me is they don't get them in California for the state jobs. And it seems kind of silly to me that we can train them and then they can get federal hiring preferences, but not state. So those are the kinds of things that we're also looking into providing, in terms of policy. But this industry, in talking about the workforce, when I talk to young people today, I say to them, it's not only about who you see, when you go to a store, and who are the people working in the store, who are showing you the different tents, and who are helping you find hiking boots that fit. And who, when you go to the park, is interpreting the history, or, when you're fishing and you come across fish and game employees who are, do they look like you? But it's also who does the science, okay? Who's doing the science that's making the decisions, and who are our policymakers? I joke with them that they should be after my boss's job, and one day I would hope to see one of them as the Secretary of Natural Resources. But I think these are the things that we need to think about in terms of pathways. And also, for our state, we are thinking deeply about equity. And that is why I work closely in my job in the Secretary's office with my colleague Moreno Rivera, who is our Assistant Secretary for Equity and Environmental Justice. And so that is something that is very important also to the governor in creating a California for All, is that we're examining the role of equity within our own operations and workforce, and really looking at our hiring practices. And so maybe that is something that the outdoor industry has done with its own hiring practices as well, is to look at what does it mean to have equitable hiring practices. We, for example, are examining our job descriptions. We've been told, like, so many of us have been trained, put all these things into the job description, and to really examine, do we really need a college degree to do that job? For example, what are the things that we can train versus you really need to have prior to coming on board? So, these are just a few examples of the things that we're doing with our state jobs. And then I imagine that the industry would be doing with theirs probably as well.
Deputy Secretary Toy, this is Rebecca with Outdoor Industry Association, and I just love seeing all of the ideas on these mentee boards. And I would add that the industry conversations that I've been having lately are really a lot about how to communicate the value of a career in outdoor recreation. And you hit the nail right on the head. The fact that there are not only public sector jobs, but there are private sector jobs all the way from the retail floor up to an advanced manufacturing product development gig, a STEM gig, and just really recommunicating the fact that there are good jobs throughout every level and in every sort of sector or division of the industry. So we could be doing a bit better job communicating the opportunity for good jobs.
Yeah. And I love it that there are these jobs, because you named one just now that, even at my age, I have never heard of before, but I thought that would be so cool, right? It's partly like, how do people even know what the possibilities are? I mean, the thought that you could design a cool material that could be thin, flexible, and keep you even warmer, maybe I'd be out there in the snow more if my poorly circulating hands and feet weren't so dang cold all the time. So I think those are just really exciting things to think about, is that, again, there's such a knowledge gap, because when you're 14 or 15 years old, how do you know about these world of possibilities unless we're doing a better job, all of us, in helping young people see the possibilities and potentials in front of them, And then Kim, I think, is that our last slide? Oh, we've got one more. Okay, two more that we're going to go. I'd forgotten. So additional state partnerships. So we've talked already in several of these prior slides about different ways the industry could partner with the state. So here are a few more to think about. Are these attractive? Are they feasible? Because those are often two different things, right? There are things sometimes that we think, that'd be so cool, but like, wow, don't see how that could possibly happen. Or maybe they are both. So one of them would be, the idea of providing free or low-cost shuttles from outdoor spaces and storefronts, connecting those as an idea to help break down transit barriers. Making outings more affordable for underserved communities. Often there are different outings that people can join. Some are organizations that do them for free, like meetups, and others you pay to join. What is the interest in funding actually restoration or remediation of park sites or possible park sites so that we can open more open space? Or providing matching funds to, say like the outdoor equity grants in certain communities. I'm interested. These are all landing in the upper white quadrant. That's going to make me super excited, folks. Are there, any thoughts about some of these ideas? Feel free to come off mic and speak to any ways in which these either surprising, interesting. Hey, John.
Hi, Catherine. One idea would be in rural areas to partner with rural public transit systems, many of which are free, that if the state could provide subsidies, they're already providing subsidies for these rural transportation systems, but to bring money in that has a recreation component to that, that could be an enormous win. In the region where I live, it's always debated, how do we get people to trailheads from towns and things like that? We can't ever seem to quite afford it. But if there was some funding coming from the state, it would leverage, it would be a win-win-win. It's good for the climate, good for getting people outdoors or recreation, and that could be a really great opportunity.
Right. Maybe, Kim, we can move to the next slide because I think we're going to ask you some of those open-ended questions, and love to put in any other ideas for, again, I think this is our last slide. So it could be, what other ways can we partner that may not have shown up on our prior slides? Everyone's thinking or typing. Here we go. Convening more conversations. Are there educational workshops, outdoor exploration programs? Some great ideas. Industry hosted events at state parks. Kind of like a teaching seminar actually in the parks. Encouraging coalition and grants funding. And you required lots of collaboration. Terrific. Well, thank you so much for contributing all of these ideas and thoughts, and for being nimble on the Menti meter here today. Really appreciate this opportunity to get this feedback from you all. This is a period where, in fact, I wish I had it ready, the date ready. I should have had the date ready for you today, but we're going to be doing another virtual workshop. This one was really focused on folks from the outdoor recreation industry, but we'll be having a wider public workshop coming up in about a month. And what we'll do is make sure that everybody who is on this list gets an invite to that so that you can come and participate in the public workshop for Outdoors for All as well, if you so desire, and would certainly always love your help in spreading the word about that public workshop so other folks, colleagues, fellow industry folks can be engaged. And with that, I think we'll stop sharing slides and turn that back to you, Lexi. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Catherine. We're going to host a Q&A. We went a little bit over, but if anyone has a dying question for Catherine, I'll let them be the first to speak up and ask it. All right. If you have a question, feel free to email me at lexi@ californiaoutdoor.org. I'll put that in the chat and I can forward it on and get back to you with that. And I'd like to pass it over to Rebecca Gillis from our partner at Outdoor Industry Association first.
Thank you. Thanks, Lexi. And thank you so much, Deputy Secretary Toy. It is so enlivening to know that we have a partner in California at a high level in state government who's thinking about these pivotal issues around equitable access. You know, at Outdoor Industry Association, as a business trade association, of course, we think a lot about very business specific policy, but we also sort of realize that we have the mandate to ensure that we and all of our neighbors and all of those sort of groups who haven't experienced outdoor access have the chance to do so in the future, because not only is that the right thing to do, but that's what we have to do to ensure that our industry continues to be successful and grows. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for, again, your partnership, the hard work. We're here to help. We're here to support you. And with that, I would like to quickly introduce our friend Katie Hawkins with Outdoor Alliance California, just to say hello to the group as well.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Lexi. And a big thank you to Deputy Secretary Toy. That was a great presentation for this audience and this community. Outdoor Alliance is a 10-member coalition. And when I think of this community, the Outdoor Industry, Outdoor Alliance Corp, we have come together and collaborated and partnered together. And I definitely see the value of working with California Natural Resources Agency to help advance this initiative, because it's important for Californians and everyone to be able to connect with nature in a safe, equitable way. And, just as recently, Congress passed the biggest climate legislation in our lifetime. And if I look at the partnership and the collaboration that happened, it's with this community and everyone that's on this call. So we know it's possible and we know we can do it. So I look forward to the conversations and opportunities to connect more. So thank you so much.
Great, thanks Katie and Rebecca, and thank you Deputy Secretary Toy for your time today. We look forward to seeing everyone next time, and we'll get this recording up online soon. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.